Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm Elizabeth Nasser. I'm one of my coordinators of the program. So we will start the program at 5 p.m.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay, ma'am.
Would it be possible for me to share screen, or should I
Yes, yes,
send?
of course. Of
I
course, of
can.
course.
Okay,
Yes,
so
you
I'll
can.
just try doing it till we start.
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening, ma'am.
Sharon ma'am, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
I'm having some problem with my screen sharing. So I will do this without the PPT, or if it is possible, if you if you would prefer the PPT during the session, I could email it to somebody. If you are okay without the PPT, then I could just do the session without a PPT, and then I could email the PPT to you after the session.
It's okay, ma'am. It's okay.
Okay, so you're saying I can do it without the PPT, is it?
If you are having a problem, then it's okay, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. So what I will do is I will email the PPT to one of you. If you can just send me your email addresses. So after the session, immediately after the session, or even now, I can you can circulate it to everybody.
Okay, ma'am.
Sure, ma'am. Sure. Okay.
Okay. So you'll need to tell me when to start. I'll start then.
Okay,
I think
ma'am.
we're having.
നമുക്ക് തുടങ്ങാം കേട്ടോ അത്.
Good evening, one and all. പത്തനംതിട്ട ജില്ലാ പ്രൊബേഷൻ ഓഫീസും ജില്ലാ നിയമസേവന അതോറിറ്റിയും LGRFും സംയുക്തമായി സംഘടിപ്പിക്കുന്ന കപ്പാസിറ്റി ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് പ്രോഗ്രാം ഫോർ പ്രൊബേഷൻ സപ്പോർട്ട് ടീമിന്റെ 19ാമത് സെഷനാണ് ഇന്നിവിടെ ആരംഭിക്കുന്നത്. സെഷൻ കോമ്പയർ ചെയ്യുന്നതിനായി പ്രവീണയെ ക്ഷണിക്കുന്നു. ഓവർ ടു യു, പ്രവീണ.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Good evening, all. A warm and hearty welcome to session 19 of the Capacity Development Program for the Probation Service Support Team as a part of Nervali project of Kerala Social Justice Department, organized by District Probation Office Pathanamthitta and DLSA Pathanamthitta in association with LGRF. So today we have with us Dr. Sharon ma'am, Assistant Professor, Center for Criminology and Justice, School of Social Work, Tata Institute of Social Science. So today the discussion is regarding social work intervention with involuntary clients. So to welcome us all again officially to this session, I invite Rohit V. Nair for the welcome speech.
Good evening all. Well, today we are conducting the 19th session of Nervali Capacity Development Program, which is organized by District Legal Service Authority and District Probation Office Pathanamthitta in association with Law and Justice Research Foundation. Today we are discussing about social work intervention with involuntary clients. The class will be conducted by Dr. Sharon, Assistant Professor, Center for Criminology and Justice, School of Social Work, Tata Institute of Social Science. Okay. We welcome you to this session, madam. And I would like to welcome Sri Subhash sir, Assistant Director of Social Justice Department, Sri Abhin sir, District Probation Officer, Pathanamthitta, and the whole LGRF team. And I'm welcoming today's program committee, Mrs. Pravina C, Ms. Jenny Tangam Joy, and Sharon K. Nasser. I'm welcoming all of you again to this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohit. So ma'am, we shall start the session now.
Okay, good evening, everybody. In case I'm not audible at any point in time, please unmute your mic and tell me that I'm not audible.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Also, I've been using a lot of data today, right through the day. And in case I get disconnected, please wait, don't go. and I will join again. Okay,
Okay, ma'am.
that's
Okay,
something I
ma'am.
wanted to say. Okay, I was looking forward to this session. I have the Center for Criminology and Justice has closely worked with Kerala Criminal Justice Departments, and it is always a pleasure to continue this association, especially because we look at Kerala as one of the progressive states when it comes to criminal justice administration and correctional work as well. The topic that I have today is work with involuntary clients, and what I thought was I'm hoping that we have a little bit of interaction as well, and it is not just lecture mode. Okay, I had prepared a PPT, but there's a problem with my settings, so I'm not able to present it. So what I will do is, the PPT was more like a guideline for me, so I do not forget the points. What I will do is I will do the session, and after I have finished, I will email the PPT in case any of you want to look at it again. Okay. Okay, so I have a question for you before I start. Okay. If I were to ask you to put yourself in the role of a donor, okay, if you were a donor and I asked you to select one person that you would help, okay, so I'll present three potential beneficiaries before you, and if you can select and tell me, if I were to tell you that out of the three beneficiaries that I share with you, you can select only one, okay, not more than one. Okay, so I'm going to call out the beneficiaries, and you need to select one. Beneficiary 1 is an orphan child who wants to get educated. Okay. Beneficiary 2 is a poor laborer who needs money for his wife's surgery. And beneficiary 3 is a convicted and acquitted thief who now wants to do an electrician course. Okay, so I'll repeat myself. Beneficiary 1 is an orphan child who wants to get educated. Beneficiary 2 is a poor farm laborer who needs money for his wife's surgery. And beneficiary 3 is a convicted and acquitted thief who has served sentence in prison. He has finished his sentence, and now he wants to do an electrician course. Okay. Now all three want money. One wants money for education, one wants money for wife's surgery, and the third person wants money to do an electrician course. Okay. One is an orphan child who wants to be educated. One is a poor farm laborer who has to get his wife for surgery. And the third is a thief who has served his sentence and he now wants to do an electrician course. Okay. Now, if you were to select one person that you would donate your money to, okay, some amount of money to, who would you select amongst these three people? You can unmute your mic and share your selection, or you can also put it on chat, whatever you are comfortable with. So, did you understand the question? Should I repeat?
Yes.
Okay. So, somebody says farmer. Okay. The farmer needs money for his wife's surgery. The child who needs to be educated. Somebody else is the child, the orphan child.
I think thief, because no one will come forward to help him.
Okay, so somebody else says child, and someone says because nobody will come forward to help him. Who are you referring to? What would your selection be?
The third one.
The third one, the person who has served a sentence and now wants to pursue an electrician course. Okay. Somebody else says the child. Okay. Option 3. The child. There are no right answers, there are no wrong answers. Okay, in this question, it's just a personal choice. The farmer who needs to get his wife operated. Okay, so we will stay with these responses. We have majority who are saying that, donate for the child's education. A few responses, that is 2 responses that say we donate for the farmer. And I think we had 2 responses that said we would donate for the released prisoner who wants to pursue his electrician course. Okay. One of you also said that you would donate for the released prisoner because you know that nobody will come forward to support that person, and so you would donate for that person. Okay. So these are a few responses. We will get into this a little later. Okay. But we will just stay with this feeling and with our responses. For our entire session, there are no right or wrong answers. It's very important for us to be honest with ourselves because okay, there's no concept of being any politically correct over here. Okay. Now, firstly, generally, before I come to the topic on involuntary clients, okay, if we are looking at all of us in this virtual platform, okay, today, in this particular Google Meet, there is one thing that is common across board. Okay, whether regardless of whether you are a student, whether you're a probation officer, whether you are from the police department, whether you are from the District Legal Services Authority, you are the people who, in the criminal justice system, perform the role of helpers. Okay. So you have different positions attached to your role. But a common point for all of you is the District Legal Services Authority is helping a person to access legal aid because it is the person's fundamental right. It's there in the directive principles. Okay. The probation officer over here is again helping a person to reform. Okay. Similarly, social workers are helping people to reform and they're helping people to be rehabilitated. Okay. The police are also playing a role here. The police are helping society to be safe. Okay, so the police's role is to ensure that society is safe. Okay. And at the same time, the police is also trying to reform the criminal. Okay, so we will assume, so I will use the word helper for all of us. Having said that, in every help context, in any conventional regular help context, there are certain conditions. Okay, there is a helper who wants to help. Okay, he desires to help. There is a beneficiary who requires help. By and large, there is agreement between the helper and the beneficiary. So the beneficiary may say, I need money for medicine. The helper may say, yes, I agree that you require money for medicine, and so I will give you money. Okay. So there is mutual agreement. There might be a little bit of disagreement also. So the beneficiary may say, I need 10,000 rupees. Okay. And the helper may say, I cannot help you with 10,000 rupees. I can help you with 5,000 rupees because I have my own limitations. Okay. But as far as the agenda for help is concerned, there is agreement. Today on social media platforms, we have a lot of advertisements that say this child is suffering from cancer. Okay, the child is has parents who are poor, and so help the child. Okay, we have advertisements of people who are helping elderly persons who do not have family support and whose children are unable to support them for whatever reason. Okay, so we have advertisements asking for help over there. Okay, so we have advertisements that come up, and then there is a helper who wants to help in a particular way, and they go ahead and help. So the point that I'm trying to make is, in traditional forms of help, there is a context where there is mutual agreement between the helper and the beneficiary. Okay. Having said that, when it comes to criminal justice affected clients, there is a different, slightly different process that is, taking place over here. Okay. In the writings that we have, academic writings and also on the field, this presentation is based a little bit on academics, but mostly it is based on field experiences that we have through a project of our center, which is called Prayas. So, criminal justice affected persons. Okay, when I use the term clients, basically I'm using the term for addressing people who are coming into the criminal justice system. So they could be prisoners, they could be people who are suspected by the police, they could also be victims, okay, in a way. So for instance, a woman who has been rescued from prostitution, okay, she also is picked up by the criminal justice system. I'm not sure how it is, but I think it also applies in the state of Kerala. But probation officers also work with victims, right? We are not only working with offenders, we also work with victims. Okay. Now, there are two kinds of people that we are working with. The first is what we call, and I'll put it on the chat, what we call legally mandated clients. Now, in other forms of help, if there is somebody who requires help for surgery, there is a helper who gives that person money. Okay. In criminal justice system, it is the law that mandates the help. So if a probation officer is offering help, it is because the probation officer is mandated by the law. There is a law that says that there is a role for a probation officer to work with people who have been convicted of an offense. Okay. Even if we are speaking about victims of crime, okay, even over there, okay, there could be a law. For example, if we are looking at women who have been rescued from commercial sexual exploitation or prostitution, there is an Immoral Traffic Prevention Act. Under that law, the police go and they conduct rescue operations. Once the police conduct rescue operations, they refer the women to a protective home. In the protective home, there is a welfare officer, okay, and or a probation officer, and it is the job of that probation officer to work with the victim. So under certain laws, we say legally mandated because it is the law that says that this person, this client, this beneficiary has to interact with the probation officer or the social worker. Even outside criminal justice system, in some situations, we have legal mandates. For example, if there is a couple, that a husband and wife that who want to adopt a child, okay, they are mandated again by the law. Okay, there is kara that says that you have to follow certain laws. Okay, you have to go to a nodal agency, you have to register yourself. Okay. So the first point, when it comes to criminal justice clients, okay, they are legally mandated, which means that the law says that whether you like it or not, you have to speak with the probation officer. Okay. If there is a police officer, okay, any police officers over here? Do we have any police officers? No one? Okay. Now, even if we have a police officer, okay, under certain laws and under certain procedures, okay, the police may ask somebody to come to the police station and give attendance. Okay. In Hindi, we call it hajri. Okay. So somebody has to go to the, so for example, we are working with a woman who was trafficked into the country, but she was considered an illegal immigrant. Okay. Because she was also a victim, we managed to get a refugee card for her. Okay, because by the time she reached us, she had also got married to somebody and she also had a child. The child was born in India. The child would be considered now an Indian citizen. So the case was complicated. We said, how can she go back home and to her country when her child is an Indian citizen? And so anyway, on humanitarian grounds, she was given a refugee card. Okay. Now the police, and she's been told that once a month she has to go to the police station. Okay. So she goes to the police station, okay, and there are certain procedures that she has to follow. Okay. So there are certain legal mandates, certain procedures that people have to follow, and they are forced to go to the criminal justice system and take help. Then there are some people for whom there is no legal mandate, but there is a social mandate. And so we call them socially mandated clients. Who are socially mandated clients? The law does not say that you have to go to a social worker. Okay. But maybe the family member may say that, you are troubling us too much, and so you must go to a social worker. So for example, there was a man who was told by his wife, either you go to a social worker. So he was a released prisoner. He was released by the court of law. He was free to do whatever he wanted, but he was engaging in behaviors that were problematic for his wife and his daughter. Okay, so he would mix around with the same old friends. He probably would not get into trouble, but his wife did not like him mixing around with those friends. She said, a growing daughter in the house, and he was moving around with these friends, coming home late, sometimes coming home drunk and all of that. So the wife had reached her wit's end. The wife was really feeling very harassed. After drinking, he would come, beat up the wife. There would be fights in the house, all of that. And she said, I cannot take this anymore now. So you go to a social worker, because she knew of a social work agency. She said, see, you go to a social worker. He said, I don't need social worker. Why should I go to a social worker? I'm fine. The problem is with y'all. Okay. So she tried to, say that you are causing disharmony in the family. She, in fact, went on to the extent and said that I was happier when you were in jail. When you were in jail, yes, I was worried about you, but at least we lived in peace. Okay. And we were worried, there was stigma, all of that. People were passing remarks and all of that, but I could deal with all of that. But after you have come out from jail, you are making life even more difficult for both of us. So it was actually better if you were in jail. Okay. So she said, I cannot live like this any longer. Either you go to the social worker. Okay. Now, initially he refused. He said, I do not want a social worker. I do not require a social worker. What is that social worker, madam, going to tell me? Okay, she'll only talk some nonsense. So he refused to go to a social worker and he continued his lifestyle. The wife then said, see, if you do not go to a social worker, I am leaving you. I'm leaving you and I'm going to my maternal family. Let people say what they have to, but I am feeling extremely harassed. I'm leaving. Okay. So initially he said, okay, you leave. What is the problem? You leave, take her also, take the daughter also, and both of you leave. Okay. So she said, okay, I am planning to leave. She did not leave immediately. Okay. But over time, she started getting more firm about her decision to leave. Okay. So she looked out for a job for herself. It was not paying much. Okay. But she said something is better than nothing, and she took up this job. And then she told him, I'm leaving now. Okay. Then he felt a little threatened because he saw that these past few months, she spoke about leaving, but she did not leave. But now she's found a job and she's talking about leaving. Okay. So he sensed that she was serious now about leaving. When he started feeling threatened that she might leave and, then he would be alone, that is when he said, okay, I'll go to that social worker. Okay. He was not interested in the social worker and what the social worker had to say. But he just wanted to stop his wife from leaving home, and that is why he went to the social worker. So there are certain social pressures that may lead a person to go to a social worker. So, in most social workers enter the field saying that we want to help, and they have this picture that there are people who will come to them for help, and there are people who would be happy that to get help, and so they should be in this line of helping people. In criminal justice social work, social workers working with criminal justice affected persons, because we are working with legally mandated people and socially mandated people, we are working with people who do not want to be with us. Okay, but they are forced to come to us for two reasons. One is, if they do not come to us, they will lose out on something. Either they will go back to prison. So if somebody says, I don't want to meet my probation officer, okay, then he will violate probation rules, okay, and he can go back to jail. He will lose his freedom. Okay. If this husband had to say that I don't want to go to social worker, his wife would have left him. He would have lost his family. Okay. In another case of a youth that we worked with, the mother, it was a theft case. The mother put a condition before him and said, either you go to the social worker or you leave home. I don't want you coming back in the night into this home. You are troubling me too much. Okay. So because he would lose out on shelter, he started coming to the social worker. Okay. So here, the people coming to us are people who are forced to come to us. Okay. I said there are two situations. So one is they are forced to come to us. Second is they do not have any other choice. By and large, the people who are coming to us are the poor people. Okay. We do not have rich people coming to us. So we have people who do not have resources who are coming to us. The poor people. Okay. Or somebody who is heavily stigmatized. Okay. Or somebody who cannot go back home. So these are the people who are coming to us. Okay. So if this is the situation, firstly, there may be disagreement, okay, between the helper and the person who is coming for help, the client. Very often there is a difference in opinion. Okay. When we talk about the involuntary client, we are talking about these people who feel that they are forced to come to the social worker. If they had a choice, they would not come to us. Okay. Now, once they come to us, there is a difference of opinion. Okay. Generally, when we work with people, we are the kind who will say that you have to go through education, you have to go through vocational training, let it take 1 year, let it take 2 years, you have to develop your skills, you have to stop beating your wife, you have to stop duping women and promising marriage, So we talk about a changed attitude and a changed value system. Now, the people coming to us may not necessarily agree. Okay, just as an example, and I don't only mean crime behavior. Okay, there was a woman who we were working with. Earlier, she was a manager in a red light area. Okay, so she would also buy women. Later on, she herself moved because she, grew older and all of that. So she came to us. And initially, she required shelter. And so that is the reason why she came to us. After some time, she developed a relationship with an older man. Okay, and she said, I don't need your shelter. So I said, okay, you have your relationship in place, that is fine, all of that. Okay. Then I saw that there was a pattern that she was following. What was the pattern? Every time she would establish relationships with older men who were nearing retirement. And she was around 35, that age. So she would establish relationships with older men who were nearing retirement. They were well settled in life financially, okay, and then they were supporting her financially. Now, there's nothing wrong, and it's her personal life, It's not my place to say who you should establish a relationship with, an intimate relationship with, right? I'm just a social worker. It's not my business. But somewhere I felt that she was also using the men, okay? So she would establish a relationship with them. Okay, then they would give her jewelry, clothes, money, all of that. After a few months or maybe a year, she would break that relationship, and then she would establish a relationship with another man. Okay, get more jewelry, okay, more clothes, more money, and this went on. So then I said, and she was okay. So she didn't really require me at all. But anyway, since once in a way she would call up, to wish or to say how are you and all of that. And then one day I said, I want to speak with you. I am finding it a problem. I don't like this. I think you cannot use relationships like this. And why don't you just, develop yourself and look out for a positive relationship, a relationship that where you really feel for a person, not just using them like that and it doesn't work. And then she said, madam, आप तो बहुत picture देखती हो. You watch a lot of movies, okay? In the sense that I have all fairy tale stories about falling in love with somebody or caring about somebody and all of that. She said, reality is not like that. Okay? You are saying that I'm using these men are also using me. It's give and take. Okay? And then she said, see my lifestyle. Okay? Now what I was offering her was, I was telling her, you come into my rehabilitation program, I will give you a stipend of 3,000 rupees. You will develop your skills and you will then, lead a so-called dignified life. Okay. So she said, okay, you'll give me 3,000 rupees for training. Do you know how much one nightie costs of mine? So I said, how much? And she said, a nightie costs 1,000 rupees. And you are offering me 3,000 rupees. I said, I'm offering you 3,000 rupees, but that will be well-earned money. Okay, and you would also develop yourself. And in time, you could explore a nice relationship with a nice person. Think of a life partner, not these men you will stay with for, to start off with, if there are men who are leaving their wives, for you, it's also there's another relationship that is getting ruined. And anyway, you're also. So she said, no, I'm fine the way I am. Now, this went on for some time. Okay. And it reached a point wherein I said, please don't call me now, you don't need me. Okay. And there was a difference of opinion. Okay. So the difference of opinion is there, and there are two kinds of situations that will happen. If there is a difference of opinion and the person does not need you, the person will leave and there will be no helping relationship. Okay. But if that person needs you, then that person will come to you. Okay. So when I say that either they are legally mandated or socially mandated, but the other point is also that they do not have a social system and they do not have resources. This particular woman then came back after several years, and then she said, okay, see, I don't want anything from you. Just do one thing. So I said, what? She said, if I'm in trouble, you get me out of it. So I said, what kind of trouble? Because, I didn't know what she meant. So she said, if for some reason I fall sick or something, you get me out. So I said, I'm not going to get you out. Because I said, I don't agree with your lifestyle, so I'm not going to do it. Okay, so there was this conflict. And she said, the second thing is, if something happens to me and I die, I do not want my body to be considered a lavaris, okay, a destitute person without an identity. Okay, you ensure that I get a decent funeral. Now, this is a very old case. I mean, she was 35 then, I was also 35. Now we are both 47 years. Okay, so this was many years back. But that time I told her, see, we are both the same age, I may die before you. And I was also angry with her lifestyle. So I said, you cannot just do whatever you want with life and then come to me and say that when I die, you do my, last rituals. You are not listening to me. Why should I listen to you? It was that kind of a thing. So anyway, she hit rock bottom when she went through a situation wherein she went home to see her children once after many years, and her children were grown up, and the children humiliated her very badly to the extent that she had a massive heart attack. And that is when she then contacted and she said, it's time that I do something about my life, and I want to prove to society that I am somebody. So she tried a lot. She became a social worker later on. She also joined a political party, and currently she's part of the women's wing of that regional party. Okay. So the point over here that I'm also trying to make is that sometimes a person comes to us like with a probation officer, there's no choice, and so you work together. Sometimes the person may come to us, but the person has a choice, so they may stop coming to us. But if there is a turning point in a person's life and they feel that they might lose something, then they may come back to us. Okay. So, and then of course there are situations where a person may never come back to us. So when we are speaking about working with involuntary clients, we say that there is disagreement, okay, between the helper and the client, okay? But the client will continue working with the social worker or the probation officer or the helper when there is no other choice. Okay, so we are the last choice. Okay. Now, in this situation, the good relationship does not work. Good relationship in the sense that helper says, I want to work with you. A client says, I want help, and we will both work together. Okay, it does not work. And so there's a different kind of politics that is involved. Okay, now what is this politics and how do we work with the involuntary client? before I move on to that, is there any question? Does anybody have any question? Or would you rather wait till the end for the questions?
Ma'am, last 30
Yeah.
minutes is for the discussion, ma'am.
Okay, so till what time can I present? I prepared a PPT. I mean, my presentation is flexible. Okay, I can, depending on the time that we have. So what time should I stop?
5 to 7 is the program, ma'am.
Yeah, so that means I can go on for another 15-20 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Also, you may get very tired. So I thought maybe if anybody wants to say something, I hope I don't bore you also. Okay, so
Okay.
I'll continue. If there's any
Okay,
question, anything you want to say, please unmute your mic and say it. Okay. So in the PPT that I will share with you, what I have is how do you work with people who do not want to be with you? Okay. But they are forced to be with you. They do not want to change. Okay. But we are going and telling them that you have to change. Okay. So these are people who are forced to be with us. On the other hand, sometimes I'll go back to our discussion, the first point that we discussed. Okay, amongst the three people that we spoke about, okay, the orphan child, the farmer, and the released prisoner. Amongst these three, which is the person that we would donate our money to? Okay, now obviously, we would want to donate our money to a worthy cause. Okay, to somebody who is not, who we know deserves help. So many of the people that we are working with are people who are not considered deserving of help. Okay. So when one of you said, I will help the released prisoner because nobody else is likely to come and help, basically, okay, what you are saying is that the chances of somebody helping a prisoner or somebody who has harmed somebody else is very, very less. Okay, and that is the reality. In all the, have you seen these advertisements, Keto and all of these social media platforms that say donate for a child, donate for surgery? Have you seen all of these? Have you noticed it?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you noticed any ad that says man released from prison wants to pursue training, help him? Have you seen any of these ads?
No.
No, right?
No, ma'am.
And even if we put up these ads, like my agency Prayas tries to put up, not on social media, but on Facebook, we have a Facebook page and we try to put up these things. Nobody comes forward. Okay, unless it is some friend of us, okay, some well-wisher of us who feels sorry for us. Yare, poor things, do it to make them happy. Okay, and they will just to help us. Okay, to help us social workers. Otherwise, nobody will come forward. The fact of the matter is, as criminal justice workers, criminal justice social workers, sometimes we also do not want to work with these people. Okay, because very often we will come across people who are manipulating us, okay, or they are manipulating somebody else. As an example, this is over 25 years back, but for me, this is the most difficult case, okay, that I worked with. I was fresh. I had completed my MSW from TSS, and I had started working. It was only some 2 or 3 months since I was working, and there was a client who was absconding from the police for, picked up for suspicion, things like that. And he was in a very bad shape. And then, we went to the police. Police said, okay, we'll drop charges. All of that happened. Okay. Now, he was not required by the police any longer. He had a drinking problem. So I said, okay, we cannot give you money. Okay. Even if he wanted money for medicines, I would never give him money for medicines. I would tell somebody else, you go and buy the medicines and you give it to him. Okay, from one particular chemist. Yeah. And I even went to the extent of telling the chemist people that if he comes back to you and says he wants to return that medication, don't take it from him, because I did not trust him at all. He would find, I think I was right. I suspected that he would take whatever and he would try to sell it off to somebody else. So if he sold it off to some other chemist, I don't know. But to this chemist, at least, I said, don't take it back from him. And if you're taking it back, don't give him money. Give the money to me. Okay, so they knew our office was close by and all. Now, sometimes he would drink and then he would come to our office and ask for money. Now, when someone has drunk and if somebody after drinking and if they were smelling of alcohol, if they came to you asking for money, would you give money? Would any of you give money? No, right? You would say, after drinking, you are coming and asking me for money. Okay. So what happened was, he came to me one day, and all my clients, we do social assessment and learn our clients, right? They are also learning us. Okay. Now my clients know, at least then, because then I used to go to the field office, that if you go during lunchtime, Sharon will either give you money or she'll give you food. She'll call for food from a hotel and she'll give you that food. Okay. So she may not give you money for other things, but for food, she'll give you money. And I also have a personal orientation where I say food does not hurt anybody. So even if there is somebody who has misused their money, hunger is hunger. It's very basic. It's okay. I may make a mistake by, unnecessarily indulging in somebody, but food is food. So if somebody used to come during lunchtime, I would, just either call for food or I would give some money and I would say, you buy some food for yourself. Okay. So he came during lunchtime and he said, I want money. But he had, I also knew he had drunk. So I said, I'm not giving you money. So he said, no, I don't, I'm not eating anything and all. I was so angry. So I said, see, you had money to drink, no? He said, no, I didn't pay for my drinks. I washed utensils and they gave me my pegs, my alcohol. So I said, then you wash more utensils and ask them for money and ask them for food. Okay, don't come to me and ask me for money for food, and that too after drinking. I said, I'm not giving you 1 paisa. You just leave the office. So he left. Half an hour after that, I get a phone call saying that he has tried to commit suicide. So I was very young then. And he was telling people that I committed suicide. I want to die, because that madam did not give me money and all of that. So she did not give me money. She told me, go out of the office. I'm not giving you money. And I felt so humiliated and all of that. Now, I was really scared because abetting suicide is an offense, right? Okay. So I said, now what if I was so young? I was, I think, maybe around 22, 23 or something. I said, now, what if the police put a charge of abetting suicide on me only? Okay, then what? So anyway, I called a police officer, DCP, who was known to us. He was helping us with our cases. And I said, so this has happened. And now I'm going to the hospital because he has to be taken to the hospital. But this is the state. So he said, don't worry. You just do what you have to do. And if there's a problem, you call me up. So I said, okay. And we took him to the hospital. Then the doctor said, don't worry, he has not drunk. He has drunk very little. He's not drunk too much to hurt himself. So we'll just give him a stomach wash. He'll be okay. So I was very relieved. And then I went to him and I said, why are you doing this and all of that? And okay. Then later on, my other clients came to me and then they said, what happened? He played a bet with somebody else. Okay. Before he came to me asking for money, he had a bet with somebody. Okay. And he said, see, I'll go there during lunch time and I will get either money or food. This person told him and said, no, you are going after drinking. She will not give you 1 paisa. So he said, let's play a bet. Okay. So he came and he lost the bet. Okay. Now, if we are looking just at the situation like this, okay, he lost a bet. Okay. And this was his way of telling the social worker, you didn't pay me 25 rupees for food, no? Okay. Now you pay for taxi fare to take me to the hospital. He didn't say it, but this is what was implied. Okay. You arrange for a taxi to the hospital, you pay for medicine, you go through all that tension and all of that. If 25 rupees was paid for lunch, all this problem would not have happened. So in a way, he was trying to manipulate the social worker. Okay. So the initial response was, if this is what he's going to do, we are not working with him. Okay. But then we also reflected a few days after that. He knew I was very angry and he then came one day and said, okay, I'm going for detox. So he was admitted to the hospital, and at that point in time, I said, I want to meet your family. His family was outside Mumbai. He said, please do not meet my family. I still went on. I traveled there. I met the family and I realized that all that he told us about his family was a lie. And his family was a very, very difficult family. Okay. So for him, okay, my saying no to money was not just about losing a bet. Okay. He had lost all name in his family. His family had completely ostracized him. Okay. So for him, losing the bet, okay, was yet another form of rejection, psychological rejection. So we did continue working with him, okay, but we placed certain conditions. In a way, this was also a turning point for him. So there was a lot of firmness saying that you do not mess around with us in future. Okay, but our doors will not close for you. Our doors are open, so in a family, you sometimes, have one parent who is strict and one parent who is lenient. Sometimes like that, we have to play the role of, as social workers also. So be firm, at the same time say that, we will continue working with them. So the point over here is that sometimes we are also forced to work with these people. I would not want to work with a person like this. Okay, I would say I would rather work with somebody who will say, thank you, madam. Okay, not somebody who will threaten me with suicide. But the point of the fact is, if we do not work with these people, nobody else will work with them. Okay, and they will continue moving into the margins. They'll get into bigger problems and they will cause more problems for other people in their families or in their communities. Okay, so very often, criminal justice social workers also are forced to work with these people. Okay, because we know that it is our job. Okay, or because we know that if we do not work with them, nobody else will work with them. So in this context of working with involuntary clients, there's a person who is forced to come to a social worker, and there is a social worker who is sometimes forced to work with these people. Okay, we may say that this person is not deserving of support. Okay, should we have worked with this boy after he has manipulated us so much? I would rather work with a woman who, is trying to bring up her child and who's struggling to bring up her child. No, why work with somebody who's manipulating? Okay, but sometimes we don't have a choice because it's part of our job. Okay, and sometimes we know that if we do not work with them, okay, what is going to happen to them? Okay. Either they will harm themselves or they will harm somebody else. And so then it becomes difficult for us to live with an easy conscience. Conscience in the sense, the burden is heavy, that what if he harms somebody else? It is my duty to at least try. Okay. If the person does not change, it is something else. But the least I can do is to try. So how do we try? There is a writing by somebody called Judith Sengolani. Okay. And she calls it the social conflict perspective. She says that the helper has to perform 4 roles. Okay. And if the helper cannot perform these 4 roles, then perform 1 role and get other people to perform those other roles. Okay. What are the 4 roles that are involved in working with the involuntary client? The first role is that of an enforcer. The enforcer is somebody who has a particular kind of authority. The probation officer can be an enforcer, okay? Because the probation officer will say, either you do as I'm saying or you go back to jail. I'm not negotiating on this. Okay. Sometimes the social worker is an enforcer, okay, where I may say, if you come to my rehabilitation program, I will give you a stipend. If you come to my rehabilitation program and if you are picked up by the police on suspicion, I will come to the police station and I will try to tell the police that, okay, we are working with this person and from 10:30 to 5:30, the person was with us. Okay. If you are part of the rehabilitation program and you fall sick, I will come with you to hospital. I will pay for your medical bills. I will ensure that somebody stays with you in hospital. I will ensure that your children are well educated. Okay. But if you do not come to me, I'm not providing you with any kind of help. Okay? So I'm putting certain conditions. I'm enforcing certain conditions before the person. Okay? I'm giving the person no choice. Okay? So sometimes the role of an enforcer is necessary. Okay? Prison officers also sometimes play this role. Okay, so there was a situation wherein a woman was offered assistance from 2 people. One was the habitual offenders, okay, and the other people were the social workers. So the woman was very confused. She was a young woman, 23 years old. She was picked up for theft. There were a group of traffickers in the jail, and they said that, we will provide you with support once you get out of jail. You will live in a nice flat, you'll earn a lot of money and all of that. Then there were social workers who were saying, you come to us, don't go to anybody else. So this woman was confused, but obviously if somebody says that you can, you live in a flat and you'll earn so much, you get tempted. So the prison superintendent told this woman, whatever happens, you have to go to the social workers, no going to anybody else. Okay. Now the woman did not know that the prison superintendent could not do anything after she has left the prison. Okay. But out of fear, she said, okay, sir, I'll go with social workers. And she came with the social workers. Okay. So one is the role of an enforcer. We are enforcing rules and we are saying you have to follow the rules, otherwise we are not providing you with support. The second role is that of a negotiator. Okay. The role of a negotiator is a little different. Here, we are willing to do a little bit of negotiation with the person. Okay. So if a person says that, I need money, okay, we'll say, okay, fine, we will give you money, but you should also do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you should ensure that you will leave your friend circle. Okay, we'll put certain conditions before them, and simultaneously we will also engage with people in the community to support them. Okay, so on one hand we are placing conditions before the person, on the other hand we are finding support systems in the community. So we may say, you have to come for our program, nothing doing, you have to come. Okay, but on the other hand, I may also try to identify an employer that will provide support for the person. So I'm negotiating with society. Okay, so one role is that of an enforcer, where I'm just saying you have to follow. Okay, take it or leave it. Second role is that of a negotiator, where I'm playing almost like a mediator. Okay, I'm enforcing certain rules, but I'm also finding support systems for that person in the community. Okay. And the third role is that of an advocate or a coach, wherein I'm advocating for that person. Okay, so I'm advocating with the welfare department, saying that this person should get access to a particular scheme. So if there is a person who does not want to get out of crime, they are forced to come to me. Okay, they are seeing me perform 3 roles. One role, the first role is where I'm saying, nothing doing, you have to come to my rehabilitation program. Okay, if you don't come to my rehabilitation program, then I will not provide you with stipend. And supposing the person does not have money and is dependent on my stipend. Or if there is a probation officer. Okay, we were working with a probation officer in one particular case. So the probation officer told the probationee, okay, that you have to come and meet me every 15 days and you have to go for training. If you don't go for training, he was doing a driver's training. If you don't go for training, then I will inform the court and you'll go back to jail. So this boy tried to say, no, sir, but I cannot come once in 15 days and I don't want to do a driver's training. So probation officer said, I don't care what you want to do. You do as I say. Okay, he was playing the role of an enforcer. Side by side, this particular probation officer contacted us, social workers, and said, see, I'm telling this boy to do these things, but can you also help him out in different ways? Okay, can you provide him with a stipend? Okay. So that he can start earning to save money, so that then he will see that if I'm following what the probation officer is saying, okay, then probation officer has also connected me with somebody who's paying me a monthly stipend. Okay, so the involuntary client who is now disagreeing with the probation officer is seeing that one side of the probation officer is saying you have to follow these rules. The other side, on the other side, the probation officer has also connected the person with somebody else, okay, who is providing a stipend. Then the probation officer is also trying to get this person to access certain welfare schemes under social welfare department. Okay, so the involuntary client is now still not agreeing to change his lifestyle, but he's able to see that the helper is playing several other roles. Does not mean that it will have an impact on the person. Okay, but what are we conveying to the involuntary client? We are conveying, number one, that we are firm and we are no nonsense people. Okay, you cannot fool around with us. You cannot manipulate us. Okay. But on the other hand, we also want you to change. Okay, you may not want to change, but I want you to change. Okay, and so I'm being compassionate. I don't have to tell somebody I'm being compassionate. Okay, but I'm trying to find support systems. So we will play these roles. Okay, it is very important for us to play the role of an enforcer, to play the role of a negotiator, identifying support systems, and to play the role of an advocate and a coach. As an advocate and a coach, I'm going to society and saying, okay, these people have wronged their families, but they also have a right to change. No? So we need to help them. I'm advocating for them. Okay. So for a person who has no advocate, okay, a person who has been considered a problem maker in family and in community, the person will realize that there is this one person in his life or in her life who is advocating for them. And this might not necessarily, but might be one of the reasons why somebody might think of changing their lifestyle. Okay, so the point of this webinar, if I were to, what are the main points that we would try to make? Number one, let us accept that we will get the involuntary client. Okay. We may not desire the involuntary client. There have been several times in my life where I have wanted to leave my job. It's been 25 years now, but at least for the first 15 years, I would tell myself that I'll work for another 6 months, then I leave, then I'm leaving, finished. And I want to work with another group of clients. I want to work with women, I want to work with children, I want to work with, orphanage. I want to work with those kind of people, not with these problem makers. Then I went on and on. And now I don't know what else to do, no? And now I may not get a job also anywhere else. Okay. So it is important for us to, number one, accept that we may not always get clients who will agree with us. Okay. We may also get clients who will disagree with us. We will get clients who will try to manipulate us. Okay. And this manipulation is coming from historical wrongdoing that has happened in a person's life. Okay. So it's important for us not to take it personally, okay, but to look at it as, they have learned certain behaviors, they have learned to manipulate. Okay. And it is somewhere our responsibility. In most cases, what we have seen is, we tend to work with a voluntary client. We tend to work with the poor person who seems deserving of help. Okay. And we would rather not work with the involuntary client. The day we take that decision not to work with the involuntary client will be the day wherein these are people who will get into bigger problems. Okay. So we have to, number one, we have to accept that part of our work is to work with the involuntary client who doesn't agree with us, okay, but who needs us. Because if we don't work with them, nobody else will work with them. Secondly, we need to play a variety of roles when working with them. Okay, play the role of an enforcer, play the role of a negotiator, play the role of an advocate and coach. If we cannot play all three roles, then we find other people who will play another role, for a particular case. Secondly, finally, as I said, the person will stay with us only if the person senses that they will lose something. Okay, they will not get a resource, they will not get money, the wife will leave them, they will go back to jail, the police will keep picking them on suspicion. Okay, so they are coming to us only for those reasons, because otherwise, so if they don't require, they will stop coming to us. Yeah. But as long as a person is coming to us, we leave our doors open for them. Okay. Doesn't mean that you agree. They ask for 25 rupees, we don't have to give them 25 rupees. Somebody may say, I don't want training, I can do business. But if I feel that person is likely to squander the money and not spend the money properly, then I don't have to agree with the person. I can disagree with the person. Okay, so I will say, no, I will not give you money, but I want to continue working with you because, so if the person has a choice, the person will leave us. Till the person does not have a choice, the person will continue working with us, okay, coming to us. So we try to build also resources for these people. Okay, so I'm just repeating before I end, and I'll just so the first point is accept involuntary clients as part of our work. Okay. Secondly, have these different roles: enforcer role, negotiator role, advocate, and coach. Thirdly, persevere with them. If a person goes back to crime, he is not necessarily a failure case. Okay. There is a lot of research and academic writings and field experiences also that go to show that the process of rehabilitation is a backward and forward process. Somebody may go back to crime, okay, but if when the person is in crime, the person remembers that there is that one probation officer who respected me, he was strict with me. He was strict with me, but he thought that I was worth the effort. Okay, maybe that memory will bring him back to you. Okay, or when he's in a difficult situation, he will come back to you. So very often we say, if the person has gone back to crime, failure. Not necessarily. Okay, the person may still come back to us. Okay, or may not come back to us, but may, at some point in time still try to change, because there was one person in his life or in her life who has invested in that person and that memory, because most of these people had nobody to invest in them. Okay, so that is the third thing that I'm trying to say. We are also, in our work, we are creating an impression on that person to say that I am a person of authority. I am representing society, and I believe that there is something that is there in you. I want you to change. Okay, so the person may leave us in a year's time, but can we create that impression also in the person? Okay. Finally, the third statement that I would also like to leave is, sometimes it is very difficult to, when we are looking even at the involuntary client, to make a distinction between offender and victim. Okay, so I'll end with a small case illustration. We were working with students who were placed in a children's home. And we came across a young girl of 14 years who was trafficked by her mother. And she had cigarette burns, on her body. And her hand was a little, she wasn't really disabled also, but it was a little twisted. And she said that her father had twisted her hand when she was very young. She said that her mother had used to send her to clients, and she would cry a lot because it would pain her a lot. But she said, my mother had no other choice. But we were very angry because she was a beautiful child and she had all these marks on her body, So we were working with her and all of that. Simultaneously, as I was taking a class, there were a few students who spoke about a particular case. And I found the context very, very familiar. So they said that, we have met a woman, she's in jail, and she's there for trafficking her child. And she's there with her very young. So one child is in a children's institution, and she has another child who is 1 year old, and the child has to undergo surgery. The 1 year old child, the baby with her, has to undergo surgery. And so we are working with her because we are trying to mobilize the hospital, the prison doctor to get the younger child admitted for the surgery. And then they mentioned where this woman was staying before she was arrested and all of that. And then I just put 2 and 2 together, and I realized that 2 of my students were working with the daughter and 2 of my students were working with the mother who had trafficked this girl, who had trafficked her daughter. Okay. So we were working with the offender and we were working with the victim as well. As we were working with the mother, we realized that the mother had a similar story to her daughter. Okay. And she said that when she was very young, when she was some 12 or something, she was sold, she was raped, she was in captivity. She doesn't know who her parents were because she was, kidnapped and sold to somebody. Okay. So from the age of 12, okay, she has been in prostitution and she had never earned. Okay. And then she got married to somebody and she had this child, she had this daughter. And the husband was an alcoholic, and one day when the girl was very young, he took her by her hand and he threw her across the room, and that is how her hand got twisted. Okay, so she said, because he did that to my daughter, I left him. Okay, because I said this should never happen to my daughter. Okay, but then she said, after a couple of years, customers were not coming to me because I was aging and there was no money, okay, to feed ourselves. And so I could see only one option. And that one option, okay, was to do the same thing that was done to me. So somebody sold me for money and I sold my daughter for money. Okay, and she said, what I did was not right. But you tell me what was the option that was available. Okay, my children were going hungry. Okay, my younger one, the 1-year-old, was, the 1-year-old was born through another, father. The 1-year-old was sick. I had to take care of her. Okay, so I had only one option: sell this girl so that at least we have food to eat, and the youngest, the baby, would survive. Okay, so we are not saying that what the mother did was right. Okay, but do you see how the cycle was going on and on? It had gone on to the second generation now. So when we are working with these involuntary clients and these problem people, we are also trying to break that cycle, okay, so that it doesn't get carried on to somebody else. So the mother was definitely a trafficker. What she had done was very wrong. Okay, but we also knew that there was a time when she was also a victim. Okay, and we also knew that this daughter that she was working with, we were working with, the child who was in a children's institution, was 14 now. Okay, in another 4 years she would be 18 years. The state would not have the wherewithal, okay, to make her into somebody who could be completely independent. Okay, so she was still attached to her mother. Okay, so she was saying, see, because of me, my mother has gone to jail. Okay, she was feeling bad about it, but she said, my mother did not have a choice. Okay, my mother had to do it for money. Okay, so she wanted to go back to her mother. She wanted to meet her mother, but we could not organize the meeting because she was the witness also. Okay, so this was a case wherein we said, if we work with the mother, okay, and if after 4 years the daughter goes back to her mother, okay, at least then she should not go back to prostitution. She should do something else. Okay, so the fourth point that we are also making here is that in working with the involuntary client who's likely to get into bigger problems, we are trying to break these cycles of crime. Okay, so that it ends over here in our generation. It doesn't go on to the next generation. So I will stop over here, and I would invite questions, comments, experiences, so we can have a bit of a discussion.
Okay, ma'am. ആർക്കെങ്കിലും questions ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ചോദിക്കാം. Questions or suggestions ആണെങ്കിലും കുഴപ്പമില്ല.
You can also share your experiences, and I could benefit from that. If you have worked with somebody who was difficult, what was the experience like? No questions?
ആണെങ്കിലും കുഴപ്പമില്ല പറഞ്ഞോളൂ.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for the session. It was very informative, and thank you so much for sharing your experience in in this short while. That was very inspirational for us to work forward with these people. And thank you for the session.
Okay. So,
ആർക്കെങ്കിലും ചോദിക്കാനുണ്ടോ?
Ma'am,
yeah.
I'll ask you a question. May I ask a question? Yes, ma'am.
Please go ahead.
You have already told we have to play a variety of roles. Sir?
Yes.
Then that is enforce, negotiate, and advocate. What are the things to be bear in mind? What are the precautions to be noted while doing 3 roles?
Yes. While playing these roles, we are working within the mandate of law. We are not doing anything outside law. So,
First thing within the law. Then.
Yes. Okay. Secondly, it is also advisable to work with a team of people and not alone.
Teamwork.
Okay? Yes,
Second
teamwork.
one, teamwork.
Yes, teamwork. Okay. So, for instance, if there is somebody who I'm talking about an extreme example, but if there is somebody who is say lying, very common, no? They may lie and ask for money. Okay. And we may say no, we are not giving money. Okay. Or they may lie and give us the wrong address. Okay. Very often then there is conflict between me and that person.
Yeah.
Okay. To diffuse the conflict, it's important to have a colleague who is working with you.
Pardon?
To have a colleague, a partner, if possible. Okay. So, for example, if there is a conflict between me and my client, and I say, you have given me the wrong address, you're not giving me right address, or you're telling me lies, or there's something. Why aren't you telling me the truth? I'm here to help you. You tell me the truth, and the person is still not telling me the truth. Okay. Now, sometimes I'm also a human being, no? At the end of the day. Okay, I'm not social workers, probation officers, we are not gods so we also get upset, we also get angry. Okay? We also don't want to work with somebody. Okay. So in times like this, it is important for me to discuss the case with somebody else. Okay, so my colleague can guide me, okay, and say, okay, Sharon, now you are
Please take the opinion of others also.
Take the opinion of others. Okay. And sometimes, okay, also communicate to the client, okay, and say that I would like you to also speak with somebody else. I would like you to speak with my team member also. Okay, so it reduces the pressure on us.
Yeah, good.
Okay, we also have to look after ourselves, in the process. It is because it's extremely challenging also. So okay, we are there as helpers, but we have to look after ourselves. So I would say, in terms of precautions, function within the mandate of law. That is very necessary. We have to be very careful about that, and have a partner, a colleague, who knows about what is happening. So there's constant discussion with that colleague, and if necessary, certain times, if the case is getting very difficult, say, okay, next time I want you to speak with my colleague.
If it is needed, we can refer.
Yes, refer the case.
Yes.
So we are continuing to work.
Thank you,
We are to work with these kind of people, problem cases, it's also important for us to look after ourselves, because it's extremely brings a lot of tension also, no?
Yes, there is any need of empathy here? Any need of empathy here? Yeah?
Sorry?
Any need of empathy? Empathy?
Empathy, of course. We are empathizing with somebody,
Yeah.
okay? But we are empathizing, but we are not empathizing with wrong behavior. We are empathizing and saying, I know what you went through was difficult. Okay,
Yeah.
I knew you were, neglected as a child. Okay,
Yeah.
I knew that you lost your right over property. Okay, I know all of that, but that does not justify that you can commit a crime.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the one,
in the case of girl children, some sort of empathy is needed. In
yes,
girls,
yes, especially young children.
Young children,
Yes.
young girls.
Yes, young girls, and also when it comes to adults. So on the one hand, we are empathizing. On the other hand, we are also saying no. You have to change the problem behavior.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, ma'am. Very good class. Nice class, ma'am.
I will share the PPT on this email address. I think you sent it to me. It's so I'll share the PPT. Y'all can I'll add my email address also on the PPT. I've not done it, along with my number, in case any of you want to get in touch at any time. Please send me an email or send me a message and we can have a conversation. I would be very glad to work with you. If any of you come to Mumbai, please do visit TISS, and you can also interact with our staff in Prayas, which is a field action project of TISS.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any questions എന്തെങ്കിലും ഉണ്ടോ ആർക്കെങ്കിലും? Questions ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ session wind up ചെയ്തോട്ടെ.
What are the
We can
specific?
Yeah.
Someone is asking questions.
Yeah, I have a question, ma'am. So, what are the specific challenges that you face when you are working with this children, or especially the sex trafficking issues?
You mean challenges working with the victims or the offenders?
See, as you have said earlier, most of the time the victims' parents are also victims.
Yes.
So, what are the challenges? Because the one big issue over there is that they are not socially accepted back into the society. So, the victim, as you said, is already the offspring of a victim. So, how do you, what rehabilitation, or how do you help them to, at least the next generation get adapted to the? Because mostly what we see is that I'm a clinical psychologist. So mostly what we see is that these young victims, they actually develop a personality disorder.
Yeah. There are
borderline, especially if they have been
there are two kinds of
been
victims.
exposed
So
to
one
sexual
is those
abuse.
who have been trafficked by family, and those who have been trafficked by other people. Those who are trafficked by family, it is most difficult to work with them, because where do they go? So we can say, okay, the family has trafficked them, now you should not go back to family. But are we a society that offers an alternative family? As social workers or as psychologists or as probation officers, we are not offering an alternative life to the person. No, we are going to be with them for just 2-3. So that stability is a challenge. Secondly, the child identifies with the need. It's so, even for instance, when children are dedicated as Devadasis and then initiated into commercial sexual exploitation. A similar situation, the young girl says that, this is part of our culture. Now what do you do? So how do we work in these kind of situations? We have seen a range of contexts, okay, and different organizations may have different approaches. I will talk about my approach. Okay. My approach would be to work with the family. We have something that we call as helping a person move from liability to asset. Okay. Many of the people who come to us are liabilities to families. Okay. Now, if we go to the family and say that she has to get out of, she cannot earn for you, the family will say, anyway, the family might be in jail, the family may not be in jail, whatever situation, they don't necessarily have to be in jail. Very often they are out. Okay? The law has not really caught up with them. In a situation like this, regardless, working with the family, especially if the victim wishes to go back to family, we have to work with the family to get the family to stop this. Okay, so the family will say this is part of our culture, or we don't have any other option. Okay, again over here there is conflict. So we are working with the family to say that we will devise alternatives. Okay. So as social workers, we are also connected with other structures. So we try to identify, we would say, okay, can we take care of the medical expenses of a person who is unwell in the family? Can we provide for a sponsorship? Okay. Can we talk about skills development? Okay. So we are working with the family so that the family stops, disengages from the harm that they are causing to the victim, number one. Okay. To a young child who has been abused from a very young age, she has normalized violence. Okay, so for her, she may believe that this is part of normal life. Okay. Her cognitive structures tell her that it is okay if somebody abuses me. Okay. That is normal in life. So we have to break these cognitive structures and say it is not okay. A normal relationship is one where you are not raped, okay, where you are not hurt. So the chances of such a child getting into a range of abusive relationships are very high because she has accepted that that only is normal. No, so there's intensive work with her. Also placing her with other children, sometimes storytelling, group sessions, wherein we are trying to say that you deserve to have a good relationship. Okay. Now we may not really get into intimate relationships, but it's important for her to establish other relationships, friendships, maybe. Okay, even the relationship with a social worker, okay, wherein she believes that okay, there are small things, okay, like there is a private space in a relationship that nobody can cross. There are boundaries in a relationship. Okay, I deserve to be in a safe relationship. If there is a relationship that is not safe, then these are the support systems that I can go to. I am supposed to say no to any kind of harm. Okay. Our experience goes to show that with this kind of intervention, you may have a child who can get out of it. Okay, but that concerted intervention is required, and this is a process that may require around maybe 3 to 4 years, not a 1 year thing where you provide these services, you say then maybe the child will get out of commercial sex also, yeah, but the child will get into abusive relationships where the child will accept abuse, or the child may start abusing somebody else because they have normalized violence. Okay? So the cognitive restructuring is something that one would need to focus on. And of course, if she's a child, then things like education, skilling, all of that. But along with that, it's very important for a child to know that this is not normal. Our biggest challenge if you're asking the challenge, the biggest challenge is that the child has normalized the violence. So for us, it is breaking that normalization. The child believes that violence is normal. Okay, this is normal. This happens. So it's okay if tomorrow my intimate partner, my boyfriend abuses me, husband abuses me, mother abuses me, social worker abuses me, police, anybody can abuse me. Okay, so that is something, that's the biggest challenge that we have faced. And there's no state mechanism, no? There's no rehabilitation, there's no state that has a rehabilitation program that will say, okay, you can, we will support a 3-year-old, 4-year-old rehabilitation program. But it takes that much of time to work with them.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. ഇനി ആർക്കെങ്കിലും questions ഉണ്ടോ? Questions ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ചോദിക്കാം. I think no, ma'am. So we can wind up the session. So,
We can wind up.
It was a very informative and wonderful session, ma'am. Thank you so much. For the vote of thanks, I call upon Ms. Jenny Thankam Choi, the technical coordinator of this session too, for the vote of thanks. Over to you, Jenny.
നമസ്കാരം. ഇന്നത്തെ സെഷന് സന്നിഹിതരായിരിക്കുന്ന ഏവർക്കും കൃതജ്ഞത രേഖപ്പെടുത്തുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ് എന്നിൽ നിക്ഷിപ്തമായിരിക്കുന്ന കർത്തവ്യം. ആദ്യം തന്നെ സോഷ്യൽ വർക്ക് ഇന്റർവെൻഷൻ വിത്ത് ഇൻവോളണ്ടറി ക്ലയൻസ് എന്ന ടോപ്പിക്കിനെ ബേസ് ചെയ്ത് ഇന്നത്തെ ക്ലാസ്സിന് നേതൃത്വം നൽകിയ ഡോക്ടർ ഷാരൺ മാം. I would like to extend our sincere thanks to Dr. Sharon for such an informative and excellent session. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for taking out your valuable time to attend to us.
My pleasure. Thank you for staying on for so long. And I hope we can work in future as well. Thanks.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഇന്നത്തെ സെഷന് നമുക്ക് ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു പ്രോഗ്രാം നമുക്ക് വേണ്ടി അറേഞ്ച് ചെയ്തു തരുന്നത് ജില്ലാ പ്രൊബേഷൻ ഓഫീസർ, ജില്ലാ ലീഗൽ സർവീസ് അതോറിറ്റി, സാമൂഹ്യനീതി വകുപ്പുമാണ്. പത്തനംതിട്ട ജില്ലാ പ്രൊബേഷൻ ഓഫീസറായി സേവനമനുഷ്ഠിക്കുന്ന ബഹുമാന്യനായ അബീൻ സാറിനോടുള്ള നന്ദി ഈ സമയത്ത് രേഖപ്പെടുത്തുന്നു. അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ അസിസ്റ്റന്റ് പ്രൊബേഷൻ ഓഫീസറായി സേവനമനുഷ്ഠിക്കുന്ന അനുപമ മാമിനോടുള്ള നന്ദി ഈ സമയത്ത് രേഖപ്പെടുത്തുന്നു. ഇന്നത്തെ സെഷൻ കോമ്പയർ ചെയ്തു തന്ന് സഹായിച്ച പ്രവീണയോടുള്ള നന്ദി ഈ സമയത്ത് രേഖപ്പെടുത്തുന്നു. സ്വാഗതം ആശംസിച്ച രോഹിത് വി നായർ, ഇന്നത്തെ സെഷന്റെ വേണ്ട എല്ലാ നേതൃത്വങ്ങളും നൽകി സഹായിച്ച അഡ്വക്കേറ്റ് ഷെറിൻ കെ നാസർ എന്നിവരോടുള്ള നന്ദിയും സ്നേഹവും അറിയിക്കുന്നു. LGRF കോഴ്സ് കോർഡിനേറ്ററായി പ്രവർത്തിക്കുന്ന അഡ്വക്കേറ്റ് ലിജോ സർ, അഡ്വക്കേറ്റ് ജിനോ സർ, അതേപോലെ തന്നെ LGRFന്റെ പ്രസിഡന്റ്, സെക്രട്ടറി, ട്രഷറർ, പ്രവർത്തകർ ഓരോരുത്തരോടുമുള്ള നന്ദിയും സ്നേഹവും അറിയിക്കുന്നു. ഇന്ന് ഈ സെഷന് സന്നിഹിതരായിരിക്കുന്ന എല്ലാ പാർട്ടിസിപ്പൻസിനോടുമുള്ള നന്ദി, ഏവരോടുമുള്ള നന്ദി ഒറ്റ വാക്കിൽ അറിയിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് എന്റെ കർത്തവ്യത്തിൽ നിന്ന് വിരമിക്കുന്നു. നന്ദി.
Thank you, Jenny. So thank you so much, ma'am. So we can wind up.
We can, okay. So all the best. Can I leave the session?
Sharon ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Hello Sharon.
Yeah.
Ma'am, myself Sharon. I have shared my number with you. You can share your PPT.
Yes,
can
yes.
share-
Yes. I got your email ID. I'll share it.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Bye. All the best.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay.